Imagine waking up to a world where two of the closest allies are on the brink of a trade war. The United States and Canada, neighbors with a history of cooperation, now find themselves entangled in escalating economic tensions. For decades, their partnership has been a model of international trade, but now it's unraveling before our eyes. So, what's behind this dramatic shift and what does it mean for the future? The economic bond between the US and Canada has always been strong. Every day, over $2.5 billion worth of goods crosses their shared border, supporting millions of jobs. From automobiles to energy resources, these two nations have relied on each other to fuel their economies. In fact, Canada is the United States' largest trading partner, and vice versa. But this relationship isn't just about convenience, it's about necessity. Both countries have built industries around this partnership, with supply chains intricately woven together across borders. But now, that foundation is being tested like never before. Tensions began to rise when former President Donald Trump reemerged on the political stage and reignited his America First trade policies. In a shocking move, he proposed a 100% tariff on Canadian vehicles and metals, claiming that Canada was taking advantage of the US economy. This wasn't just a symbolic threat, it was a direct attack on one of Canada's most valuable exports. The automotive industry alone accounts for over 60% of Canadian vehicle exports, making this tariff a potential economic disaster. Trump justified his decision by citing national security concerns, an argument eerily similar to the one he used in 2018 when he slapped tariffs on steel and aluminum. But experts argue that this is more about political posturing than security. Either way, the announcement sent shockwaves through Canada's government and industries, forcing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to respond swiftly. If Trump thought Canada would back down, he was sorely mistaken. Trudeau immediately announced a counterstrike, massive retaliatory tariffs on US goods. This wasn't just a symbolic slap on the wrist. Canada is targeting American industries that rely on Canadian exports, including agriculture, consumer goods, and even Tesla, the crown jewel of the electric vehicle market. A 100% tariff on Tesla vehicles would effectively double their price in Canada, causing demand to plummet. Beyond individual companies, Canada is also looking at broader economic strategies. Officials have hinted at restricting raw material exports to the US, including lithium and nickel, both of which are essential for the American tech and automotive industries. These minerals are crucial for producing EV batteries, and Canada has some of the world's largest reserves. Cutting off this supply would force the US to seek alternatives in China, a move that contradicts its own geopolitical goals. The fallout from these trade policies could be devastating for both sides. The North American auto industry, which operates on an integrated supply chain, is now at risk of total disruption. Cars and trucks assembled in Canada rely on parts from the US and vice versa. A tariff war would drive up production costs, which would be passed down to consumers. Imagine walking into a dealership and seeing a Ford F-150, a staple in both countries, suddenly costing $10,000 more overnight. Steel and aluminum industries are facing similar chaos. Canada exports millions of tons of these materials to the US every year. If the tariffs go into effect, American companies will have to pay significantly more for raw materials, making everything from construction projects to beer cans more expensive. The agricultural sector isn't safe either. Canada imports billions of dollars worth of US produce, dairy, and meats. Retaliatory tariffs could drive up food prices, directly impacting the average consumer. With tensions rising, Canada is looking for a way out, and that means looking across the Atlantic. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, between Canada and the European Union has already proven successful, increasing trade by 65% since its implementation. Now, with the US becoming an unreliable partner, Canada is accelerating efforts to deepen ties with Europe. One of the biggest opportunities lies in minerals. Europe is pushing aggressively towards green energy and electric vehicles, creating a massive demand for lithium, nickel, and cobalt, resources that Canada has in abundance. If Canada shifts its supply chains to Europe, it could leave the US scrambling to secure its own sources. But there's a catch. While the EU is a strong market, it's not as convenient as the US. Transporting goods across the Atlantic takes longer and costs more. European manufacturers already have established supply chains, and Canadian businesses will need to adapt to different regulations. Still, the prospect of a stable, tariff-free trade agreement is looking more attractive than ever. Beyond the economic consequences, this trade war is reshaping political landscapes in both countries. In the US, Trump's tariffs are a rallying cry for his supporters, who see them as a necessary move to protect American jobs. But economists warn that the long-term damage could outweigh any short-term gains. American consumers will feel the pinch of higher prices, and industries reliant on Canadian imports will face disruptions. In Canada, the situation is just as complicated. Trudeau is facing immense pressure to stand firm against US aggression while also protecting Canadian businesses. His political future could depend on how well he navigates this crisis. If he successfully pivots towards Europe and diversifies Canada's trade partnerships, he could strengthen the country's economy in the long run. But if he fails, the consequences could be dire. This trade war isn't just about Canada and the US. It's part of a larger global trend. Protectionist policies are becoming more common, and countries are re-evaluating their economic alliances. If Canada successfully deepens ties with the EU, it could encourage other nations to follow suit, reducing dependence on the US and potentially weakening its economic influence. Meanwhile, China is watching closely. If Canada and the US sever economic ties, China could step in as an alternative trade partner. That could have major geopolitical consequences, shifting the balance of power in North America and beyond. So what happens next? Will Canada fully pivot towards Europe and cut ties with the US? Or will both nations come to their senses and negotiate a compromise? The truth is, no one knows for sure. But one thing is clear. The stakes have never been higher. This isn't just about trade, it's about power, politics, and the future of economic alliances. And as this drama unfolds, the rest of the world is watching closely because the outcome could reshape global trade as we know it. One thing's for sure. This story isn't over yet, and what happens next could change everything.